Hi and welcome to this tutorial from Real Engine 4. In this tutorial we're going to take a look at the process of creating a second set of UVs inside of 3D Studio Max for the purpose of light maps and creating a light map channel for our static mesh objects. So I'm going to be using Unreal Engine 4.7.3 and also Autodesk 3D Studio Max 2012 during this tutorial. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the process of creating a second set of UVs for both of these objects here, which is just some basic kind of rudimentary meshes that I've just thrown together. One of which is like kind of a modular floor mesh that could be used and snapped around inside of the scene, and the other one is this pillar here. And we're going to have a look at unwrapping both of these with the second set of UVs, specifically for baking static lighting within the engine. I'm just going to show you some of the things that really I've kind of started to understand as I've done more and more of this stuff, and hopefully you'll be able to utilise this in your own projects. So the reason why I've got these two different types of meshes here is because one, this pillar here kind of represents a unique item in your scene, something that is very, very unique and can have a lot of unique UV space. The other one here is this kind of floor mesh, which is kind of a flat mesh. So just to show you if you've got things like walls and floors that need to snap together, because I see a lot of people who have issues with, so when they bake their lighting inside of Unreal, they get kind of a seam of light bleed down the edges. Just so that you're aware of the process for both of them. It's just to get a bit of a contrast between them, really. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to take you through the process of creating a second UV set, talk you through some of the best practices when doing that, and give you some little insights into how I work when I do this kind of thing to see whether or not that might be helpful for you. So with that said, let's get started. Hi and welcome back. Let's have a look here at starting this off then. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by unwrapping this pillar, I think. So I'm just going to right click on that and I'm just going to click hide unselected. What we've got here now is our completely kind of bare mesh. There's no UV setup for this at all at the moment, and what we're going to have a look at doing is we're going to have a look at unwrapping the this object. So first of all, we're going to have two sets of UVs. So the first set of UVs, typically when you're working with static meshes and meshes for in your scene, is going to deal with things like the materials and how those are applied. So it's going to be everything from like all the different textures that you've generated, so like albedo and roughness and metallic, that are all going to be put inside of a material to get a really nice material effect, and then that would be applied to your mesh. And the way that those materials are displayed on that mesh is down to the way that you set up your first UV set, so your first set of UVs for that particular object. The primary focus of this tutorial is actually going to be on the creation of the second set of UVs, which is going to deal with static lighting, so baked lighting on the object. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly unwrap our first UV channel. So I'm just going to the modifier stack there, found unwrap UVW and applied that modifier. So I'm going to click on open UV editor, and then you'll see our UVs, and they're all over the place at the moment. So I'm just going to quickly marquee select these. I'm just going to go mapping and then flatten mapping and click OK. I'm not going to do a great deal else to them, purely because there's no textures that I'm going to be applying to this mesh apart from just a flat grey texture, so we can see how the lighting is displayed on that object inside of UV4 in a short while. So I'm just going to right click on this mesh once I've done that, and I'm just going to convert it back to an editable poly. That's just so I can bake that information into it, so that those UVs should then be baked into that UV channel. So I'm just going to go to unwrap UVW again, open UV editor, and you can see here again just those flattened mapped UVs are still there. So the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go I'm actually going to set my smoothing groups first, just to make sure that those are set up. So if I just close this down and once again just convert it back to an editable poly, I'm just going to have a look. I'm just going to grab all of the polys on this object and just make sure that it's actually got some smoothing groups set. This has, but if whatever mesh you're working on doesn't have any smoothing set on it, you can just auto smooth it as just like a quick brute force method of getting some smoothing onto the object. So just clear it, and then with all the polys selected for that particular mesh, just click on Auto Smooth here, and then that will set some smoothing groups for that object. So let's just double check those. Yeah, smoothing seems to be set up fine on that now. So I'm just going to right click again, convert it back to into a poly. So let's have a look at the process now of actually setting up our second set of UVs for lighting. So again, I'm just going to find in my modifiers here, I'm just going to look for unwrap UVW, and then I'm going to open my UV editor, just double check to see that those original UVs are still there. And then down here in channel, you'll notice that there's a map channel section here. All you need to do to add a second set of UVs is just press this little up arrow on here, and then it will give you this channel change warning, and just click abandon for now. And what that'll do is that changes us over to our second set of UVs, and this is going to be our Lightmap UVs set. So just quickly, I'm just going to show you this. So this is the documentation for unwrapping UVs for Lightmaps. Okay, I recommend that you go to and read through as much of this documentation for UV4 as you can. It's really informative. But this section here covers the process of creating or some of the practices, the best practices for working with your second set of UVs for lighting. Okay, so do make sure that you have a look at that. The main thing to note, as far as I'm concerned, from my perspective, is that they are very different to your first set of UVs when you're working with materials. A lot of the rules that you might have been ingrained into for when you've been working with meshes in the past, you know, when you're getting everything ready for applying a material to it and surfacing an object, is very different, and those rules change when you're working with Lightmap. So for example, you need to make sure when you're unwrapping your second set of UVs that everything is within this normalized space here, or this 0 to 1 space. Everything has to be inside of here, right? That's the first rule, or the big rule as far as I'm concerned. It has to be inside of there. Anything outside of it, you'll get all kinds of errors when you bake your lighting, and you'll get really poor quality. So you've got to make sure that all the UVs, all the islands or UV islands for this object are inside of the normalized space here. Okay. That's kind of imperative. The other thing is as well that you don't have to necessarily concern yourself with like even texel ratio across the object, or UV stretching or anything like that. You can actually scale and stretch your UVs to fill the spaces as accurately as possible. But you need to make sure that between your UV islands, and we'll come on to this in some more detail in a short while when I'm actually getting through unwrapping this, but you need to make sure that you leave a few pixels padding depending on what your target resolution is for your Lightmap. I mean, you typically, just leave a fair gap between them, nothing huge, just a sensible gap between the UV islands, just to make sure that you don't get what's called bleed over between those two islands, where it's trying to bake the shadows onto your object. So just a few things there, just a few little pointers. Some of these things some of them I'll remind myself of, I'm sure, as I'm going through as well, showing you how to unwrap this object here for its second set of UVs. So all I'm going to do just initially is I'm just going to grab all of these here, and I am going to go to mapping, flatten mapping. I'm just going to flatten map it again just quickly. Turn this background image off here. What I can then do is start having a look at maybe moving some of these elements out of the way, which are absolutely fine. So let's just have a quick look. So let's just move this out of the way over here. That can be moved over there just for now. I'm just putting these over just to organise the scene a little bit, just to make life a little bit easier, and just see what we actually need to stitch together, if anything. So I would imagine this this section here we're going to need to do some work to. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab all these polys here, and I'm just going to go to projection. I'm going to use a cylindrical unwrap on that just to get that sorted. I'm just going to straighten that selection as well just to finish it off, and then I've got an edge there that needs welding, so I'm just going to stitch that together in a moment. First of all, actually, I'm just going to make sure that that's all okay. So just keep that up there for the moment. Just get this object just quickly unwrapped. So yeah, let's have a quick look. I'm just going to go around and start to organise some of these islands a little bit better. Okay. Weld that off there and just quickly straighten that out again. I'm just going to make sure as well that I haven't got any inverted polys, so I'm just going to go and have a look for select inverted faces. You can't have any flipped or inverted polys with this stuff either. So next thing is, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go to rescale clusters just to scale that stuff appropriately, so there's everything's a little bit more even, and then I can start to have a look at starting to pack these elements into our normalized space here. So if I don't make a mess of it, grab all that, and I'm just going to pack in some of these chunks here, rotate some of these as well just a little bit. To get them to fit a little better. Again, just make sure that there's some padding between the UV islands. That's kind of the key thing here as well. So you don't have to go crazy with it, but just make sure that they all fit in. So I'm just going to select, put on select by element there, and just grab all these bits and throw them in. Might end up wasting a little bit of UV space here actually. I might want to scale some things around and move them about in a moment just to try and get the most out of this UV space, but it's more just to demonstrate the point to you how this works. So okay. Pop this over here, those over there, and I can grab this and actually scale this slightly. As I say, like it doesn't necessarily matter about it being completely even. Having there we go. Okay, so that's that done. So I don't think there's any components left there. So what I can do now is just going to double check again. There aren't any inverted faces, there aren't any overlap faces, and then I'm just going to convert this back to an editable poly. And now we have an object which has got two sets of UVs. So if I just show you that again, so if I just go to unwrap UVW and go to open UV editor, you can see our first set of UVs here, which are just flattened, mapped, and thrown in. And then if we just go to our second set, you can see we've got our second set of UVs here as well. It's important. The reason why I've done that, the first UV channel, is just so that once we get this inside of Unreal, we can have a look at it, and I can show you the distinct difference between the two sets of UVs. So just convert that back to an editable poly. I'm just going to unhide the floor again and just grab that. Okay, so let's have a look at sorting out the Lightmap UVs for this plane here. Just so that we're following some good practice, I'm just going to change the naming conventions on some of these objects. So I'm just going to quickly change this name of this plane over to sm_floor mesh, because this will be used as the floor in the scene when we come to set our lighting up. I'm just going to quickly unhide the pillar as well. I'm going to change the name on that, so I'm going to call it sm_large pillar. Cool. I'm just going to hide that now. So going back to this object here, I'm just going to quickly have a look inside the UVs for this. So I'll have a look at unwrap UVW here. I'm just going to double check the first set of UVs. Then I'm just going to switch over to what will become the Lightmap UVs for this object. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm actually just going to scale this down just a little bit to give a little bit of a border around the edge. So it's really good practice when working with Lightmap UVs to leave a little bit of a border around the edge here, just to try and eliminate Lightmap bleeding. Now the size of this border that you're going to try and have to leave in here is dependent on the target Lightmap resolution. So the kind of default size that you're going to get inside the editor is 64 pixels by 64 pixels for anything that you import. And what you're going to want to do is have a look at probably setting up your Lightmap UVs to that initially. So working off kind of a 64 pixel by 64 pixel resolution. And as you change the resolution, so if you increase the resolution on them, you may want to come back to max and make some minor adjustments to those light maps because to these Lightmap UVs, because obviously if you're working with a 64 pixel image initially and then you scale up to say like a 128, then you are going to have a lot of wasted UV space, so you're probably going to want to come back in and make some adjustments. You can create some images with the right number of pixels on there to kind of scale some of this stuff down and see how many pixels padding you're leaving between objects. But yeah, ideally you want to leave some padding around the edge of the objects here, which also brings me back to the point, and I'll just go over this again. I'm just going to convert that to editable poly and hide everything. Is on this pillar, you have the same thing going on, so have a little bit of a border running around the edge on our Lightmap UVs. So we have a little bit of a border running around there. So the one thing I'll probably say is probably need to just move that over just a touch there, bring that over with it. But yeah, you also want to make sure that you leave a adequate amount of padding between your UV islands, just to make sure that you get really good and clean light bakes or light builds, sorry, inside the engine. So yeah, some of the couple of rules there to think about are that you need to have a bit of a border running around the edge of your UVs, and also make sure that you keep adequate padding between your UV islands, and you should be pretty much set. The other things are you've got to make sure that it's all utilising unique space within the 0 to 1 space and all nice space, and you also need to make sure that there's no overlapping polygons or inverted faces or anything like that. But then you're pretty much good to go. So once you've unwrapped the second UV set or UV channel on your objects, you're pretty much good to go. So the next thing we're going to have a look at is just quickly grabbing those objects and exporting them out to Unreal. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to have a look at the process of exporting these meshes out into UV4. So I'm just going to grab the floor mesh initially. I'm just going to go to File, Export, Export selected, and I've got a folder on my desktop just called Export. So I'm just going to go to that, and I'm going to call this SM_floor mesh. Just going to click Save. Make sure that I've got smoothing groups, tangents and binormals, triangulate and preserve edge orientation on. I'm just going to click OK. And then I'm going to select the pillar. I'm going to do the same thing. So File, Export, Export selected. Apart from I'm going to call this one SM_large pillar, like that. And then that's that. Okay, so everything's exported now. I've got a fresh project that I've created in U4 here, which is just called Lightmapping Tutorial. It's a blank project in 4.7.3. And I've just got a map here which is completely empty. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to right click on this content section here, and I'm just going to pop a new folder in just called meshes, like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a look at the process now. I'm just going to import those two meshes that we've been working on into the engine. So let's have a look at that. So I'm just going to grab these two meshes here. I'm just going to bring these in. I'm just going to drag and drop them into my newly created folder called meshes. What I need to do is I'm just going to leave auto generate collision at the moment. I'll just create some rudimentary collision for us. I'm just going to make sure that generate Lightmap UVs is unticked here. And then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure that import normals and tangents is on. I'm just going to click import all. And then that's going to bring in my two meshes. First few things, I'm just going to open up both of those. I'm just going to talk you through just how we can check to make sure that in these two assets we have here, that it is actually going to use our Lightmap UVs, and also so that we can increase the Lightmap resolution slightly. So first thing, let's just check to make sure the UVs have come across. So if you just click this UV button here, you'll be able to see the UV of your object. You can switch between the different UV channels and check whether or not you have two, just by clicking on this little drop down here. So if I change it to UV island 1, UV channel 1, you can see our UV islands there for our light maps. We should be able to do the same thing here with our pillar as well. So what we should be able to do is we should be able to now have a look to see whether or not we have a second UV channel, which has got our light maps in. So if you remember, this is the setup that I just threw together crudely for a light map for this pillar here. So yes, they've both got those in there, which is great. So let's toggle off that UVs button there. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to have a look at just increasing the light map resolution on these ever so slightly. So by default they'll have a light map resolution of 64 pixels by 64 pixels, which is the default at the moment. So if I just come in here, you'll see that under static mesh settings, under light map resolution, it says 64 here. So we're just going to change that to 128 at the moment, which should be plenty, and we're going to do that on both of our objects. So just grab that, change that to 128 as well. What we need to now check is that it has or is in fact going to use our light maps or light map UV channels that we've created inside of 3D Max. So what we need to do is come down into, again, in the static mesh settings, and just check this light map coordinate index here. That should be set to 1. And the reason why I say that is because if you have a look in this drop down again, you have UV channel 0 and then UV channel 1. Okay. So we need to make sure that 1, which was the one that we were looking at before on both of our meshes, is indeed set in this light map coordinate index here. You can change that if you've got other UV channels and stuff in here. You could change that over if you needed to manually. But that's all good. So those are fine. Those should work for us perfectly. So I'm just going to shut both of those down. Just going to right click in here and I'm just going to click save all, just to save everything quickly. Now then, back in my scene, I'm just going to drag in my floor mesh. Just going to go over to unlit. I'm just going to pop my pillar on top there. I'm just going to start to organise this stuff really quickly. Just get it all snapped together in the viewport here. It's orthographic viewport. Okay, so that's that. I'm just going to grab all those just quickly. I'm just going to clone this over. So just make this a few wide. Okay, so just select all these again. I'm just going to press Control Shift A just to grab all of those. I'm just going to clone these down. Do the same thing again. Just clone it down. So just make a nice large environment just for us to throw some lights into in a minute. So just do that. It's going to have lots of pillars, all the pillars in fact. So okay, that's that. So we've got that sorted. So I'm going to maximise this viewport again. Just go back over to lit mode. What I'm going to do first, I'm just going to quickly hold L and click in my viewport. Just add in a light. Now, over on one of the sides over here, I'm just going to pop in on this corner here. I'm just going to change this light over. Now I want all my lights to be static, not stationary or movable, so I'm just going to change that over to a static light. I'm just going to right click on this and I'm going to change this over to a spotlight and just rotate this into place. And I'm just going to change the cone angles on this and make them a lot wider, so we just get a larger spread on them on that. I'm just going to drop this back and over slightly, just so we can have this spotlight kind of beaming into our environment here. And then I'm just going to pop in another static light, but this one, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop the brightness right down on this, and I'm going to turn off shadows just so that we can have this as like almost like a bounce light. Okay, so I'm just going to pop that there and leave that there like that. Leave that be. And then we'll see how that comes out in a few. Right, kind of over it here, like way off into the distance, we're going to have what's supposed to look like like a fire colour, so we can have like an orange or something that's like a contrasting colour. So I'm just going to pop that in here. Again, just going to change that over to being a static light. I'm just going to have a look at changing this over to being a kind of orange colour as well, and just adjust some brightnesses on it. Just going to change this over to an orange colour like this, maybe a little bit lighter, something like that. Should be fine. I'm just going to drop the... I'm going to keep the brightness the same on that one. I'm just going to clone that though. I'm just going to make a copy of it. Again, it's going to be a static. I'm just going to drop this down to about being a brightness of like maybe 100 or 150, just something reasonably low as an intensity. I was going to drop the attenuation down slightly to like 500 or something. I'm just going to push that over there. And then I'm just going to bring another one of these over here, kind of over this side. I just need to make sure actually that this isn't going to cast shadows, same as this one. So they don't cast shadows, they can just act as a, give the impression of bounce lighting a little bit. Move that over there a bit as well. And that should be alright. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to have a look at just building the lighting now on this, just to make sure that everything's okay. So just in review, all we've done is we've just imported these meshes in, and I've made sure that they are using the right UV channel, and made sure that they've got the right kind of Lightmap resolution. So change that to like a 128 by 128 texture. And also just set up some lighting and pop this into environments. The only other thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go into this material here actually, which is just transferred over with the FBX import. I'm just going to give this a roughness just quickly, so I'm just going to put a constant value on that, and just increase the roughness just a little bit. I'm just going to save it, and then go to this tutorial map thing here. I'm just going to click Save All, just to give it a bit of a save. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to build this with the highest possible quality so that we can see what this looks like. So you can use everything from preview through to production. Production will take a little bit longer, but there's not much in the scene, so it shouldn't take long to build the lighting. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to change that over to production, and then I'm just going to hit this build button, and when that's finished building the lighting, I'll come back and we'll conclude this tutorial. Okay, so our lighting is finished building, and you can see here that we've got a scene here with lots of shadows in the scene. There aren't any real errors kicking around. We haven't got any overlap in our UVs for our light maps, and there doesn't appear to be any bleed occurring between our light map UV islands as well. So that seems to have been quite successful. So we've got a nice lighting bake or build here for our scene, which has come out quite well. So really that's it for this tutorial. You can see here that we've got static lighting baked onto our static meshes here quite successfully. If you want to improve the quality of the shadows, you can start to push up the light map resolution inside your objects, but what I would say is that this isn't the most efficient approach. If you start to do that, things will you will start to use up tons of memory very quickly if you've got loads of objects like we have in this scene. So just be sparing with it. Try and get a nice balance between visual quality and also kind of the performance in your scene. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this tutorial. I hope this has been useful for you. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you managed to use this successfully with your projects. Thanks.